Okay, what's going on, everybody? We're here. We are live. I want to thank you all for joining me today. My apologies for being late. There was a little piece of information that I was looking for that I wanted to make sure I had ready for you guys today to display on the screen for you that I was having trouble finding. So that's why I'm late. But nonetheless, we are here and we are live. So if you can see and hear me clearly, please drop a 1 in the live chat if you can see and hear me clearly. And as I'm waiting for the ones to come in, if you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button. That's the most important thing you can do for me on this channel. What it does is that it helps to make sure that those who are subscribed to the channel will indeed get their notifications. And it also helps to push the video through the YouTube algorithm. Secondly, if you're new to the channel, or maybe you're one of those stubborn ghost watchers, please consider subscribing to the channel, as well as hitting the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. And lastly, please make sure you share this video out on your social media platforms to your family and friends to inform them on this news and information. And yes, it does give me a slight boost in the YouTube algorithm also. And lastly, follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link to my Telegram should be pinned in the live chat, but it's definitely in the description box below, and will be pinned in the comment section once the stream ends. And also, lastly, if you're new to the channel, you're definitely like, oh, I'm not subscribing to this. The intro is too long, even though you could have fast forwarded, but it's cool. Lastly, all the information that you see on your screen today, I will have the links pinned in the comment section below, or actually also in the description box below also, so you can read these articles and whatnot for yourself, right? And with that, let's get the stream started because I see the ones are coming in. So let's jump into this today, man. The Trump trial, hush money trial, is over, right? As many of you may know, it's over. And now it's just a matter of whether or not the jury is going to come back and say Trump is guilty or not guilty. Out of the, I believe it's, 34 counts that he's been, charged with, 34 different counts of like falsifying documents and whatnot. He's definitely going to get found guilty on some of them, right? Not all of them, but some of them. So with that being said, what does that actually mean for Trump, right? What does that mean for him if he gets found guilty? Will he still be able to run for president? If he gets sent to jail, will he still be able to run as president? Right? Will he be able to pardon himself? How does all this actually work if there's a guilty verdict? And that's what I wanted to get into today, because I was really confused about how all of this would work if a guilty verdict come down, which most likely there's going to be, a couple of them, because like I said, with a fixed jury like this, you're definitely going to get found guilty on something when all you need is 4 out of the 12 to say that you're guilty of a crime, right? So that's what I want to get into right now. Let's jump into that right now. And shout out to DSB. Thank you, DSB. I appreciate you for not only just being a channel member, but contributing to today's stream with the super sticker. Thank you very much, DSB. I appreciate you for the support that you're showing the channel. But let's dive into this now. So I want to get into this first article here. I believe it's from the Washington Post. Is it from the Washington Post? No, it's from the New York Times. And it said, what penalties could Trump face if he's convicted? Let's get into that first. So once again, he's been hit with 34 counts of what is it, falsifying documents. What are the penalties that he's looking at if he's convicted? Let's jump into this. If Donald Trump is convicted, it will be up to Justice Juan M. Merchan to decide whether his punishment will include prison time. Mr. Trump is charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records related to the cover-up of $130,000 in hush money payment that was made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels in the days leading up to the 2016 election. All of the charges are Class E felonies or the lowest category of felony in New York State. Each count carries the possibility of up to 4 years in prison. But if Mr. Trump is convicted on more than one count, Justice Merchan would likely impose the punishment concurrently, meaning he would have Mr. Trump serve prison time on each of the counts simultaneously. Incarceration is not a given. Justice Merchan could instead opt to impose a sentence of probation with no prison time. Mr. Trump would then be required to regularly report to New York City's probation department. He could also be jailed immediately if he committed additional crimes. Imagine having a president of the United States that has to report to his parole officer. That sounds wild. Only in America. Only in America. Does your president, possible future president, have to report to his PO, right? He has to report to his parole officer, at least once a month, and then he'll get back to the business of running the country. That sounds crazy. A justice merchant would likely hand down Mr. Trump's sentence several weeks after the guilty verdict. But it's possible that any punishment could be delayed. And that's most likely what would be the case, right? Trump has been able to very masterfully delay all the other cases that are against him. Even if a guilty verdict comes down and comes time to, serve up Trump's punishment, I'm sure him and his team will find some way to delay that, right? Mr. Trump, who is again the presumptive Republican presidential nominee, will undoubtedly appeal any conviction, a lengthy process that could take months or longer and would likely not be resolved before Election Day. In that case, he would likely remain free until the appeal is resolved. So let's say what happens if the appeal is resolved and things don't go his way, right? Whether it be before the election or after election. We'll play on what happens if things don't go Trump's way before the election, right? Let's say that these things don't work out and this is the one case, where Trump just isn't able to really control things. And they decide to slap him with some jail time, possibly, right? What does that look like? Here's this article here that says, can Donald Trump still be president if convicted in the hush money trial? If he's convicted guilty and he's unable, like I said, to maneuver around, the sentencing and whatnot, how does that look? Here's how that looks. And we're going to go through that in the next two articles. It looks like this. Now, what happens if he's actually convicted guilty? Can Trump still run for president if he's convicted? The answer is yes. The Constitution sets forth three main requirements for being eligible to become president, and none of them reference being a convicted criminal. Now, what's crazy when you really kind of sit and think about it for a moment is that if you're a convicted criminal, you can run for president, but you can't vote for president. That's something that's very interesting, and that probably should change, right? I think if you've done the crime and you did a time, you should 100% be able to vote. That is completely backwards, to say the least, that you can be a convicted felon, who just lost the trial and can still become president, but you're not allowed to vote if you're in that same situation, but not running for president. That's retarded. But anyways, I digress. Candidates must have been born in the U.S., be over 35, and have lived in the United States at least 14 years. Those are the requirements for you to be able to run for president in the United States. And I quote, "Nothing prevents him from running for president and being elected, even if he is in jail at the time of the election." And that's what I really want to get into. Nothing prevents him from running for president and being elected, even if he is in jail at the time of the election. Elizabeth Wydra, president of the Progressive Constitutional Accountability Center, told the LA Times. That's despite people with felony convictions, a crime that can be punished by a year or more in prison, not being allowed to vote in some states. And once again, this article just goes back into the absurdity behind all this. Not that you can run for president if you're a convicted felon. You should be able to. I don't see why not. If you've served your time, if you're taking your punishment, then okay. But the idea that you could run for president, but you can't vote for president, that's just backwards. But now let's get back into what happens if he is sentenced to jail. If Trump is sentenced to jail prior to the election, which is a huge, what if? Because I think, at least in my opinion, that's not going to happen, right? But I'll give you my closing thoughts at the end. He's not going to jail, in my opinion. But what if he did? Because it is technically a possibility. Well, let's get into that, because he wouldn't be the first person running for president from behind bars. That has actually happened before. That's actually happened before, where we've had a man run for president from behind bars, and it wasn't a fluky, fugazi run. He actually got, over 1 million votes from behind bars in the 1920s. Let's jump into that right now, and that's going to come from this article here titled "Can Trump Run for President from Prison?" Yes, and it's been done before. It's been done before. I had no idea. Let's get into it. There are no legal obstacles to running for president as a convicted felon or even from behind bars. And if Trump finds himself in that predicament, he'll be following in the footsteps of another rabble-rousing populist and frequent presidential candidate, the avowed socialist Eugene V. Debs, who received nearly 1 million votes while in prison a century ago. A century ago, Eugene V. Debs received 1 million votes while in prison. Let's get into that, because I had no idea that was the case, that ever even happened before. Debs is far from the only person who has sought the highest office in the land while in prison, but he was the most successful. In 1920, he became the Socialist Party nominee while serving a 10-year federal sentence for urging people to resist the World War I draft. That's stiff sentencing. You got 10 years in jail for urging people to resist the draft. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. He received 3% of the popular vote, a respectable tally for an incarcerated socialist, but nowhere near enough to force the nation to seriously grapple with an improbable constitutional question. What happens if an imprisoned candidate actually wins? Let's get into that. Many experts contend that even if Trump is convicted, he is unlikely to see prison because judges rarely sentence first-time offenders to prison for that type of felony. And the reality is that it should have never been upgraded to a felony to begin with. The crime that he has allegedly done is actually a misdemeanor. But New York State, New York City or whatever, found a way to do a great reach job and turn that into a felony. But it's actually should have just been a misdemeanor and a slap on the wrist, and they move on, right? But let's carry on. Let's keep going. And I want to read that again. Many experts contend that even if Trump is convicted, he is unlikely to see prison time because judges rarely sentence first-time offenders to prison for that type of felony. A Trump electoral victory from behind bars would open up a constitutional can of worms. But the general view among legal scholars is that the need for a duly elected president to fulfill the duties of office would override a criminal conviction and require the sentence to at least be put on hold. So there is technically the possibility that Trump could be placed in jail, but win the election. And because the duty of being the president is such a serious job, which it obviously is, that trumps him being in jail. So now he'll be removed from jail and sent straight to the White House for him to fulfill his obligation as the president. And after his 4 years is up, it's back to jail you go, right? In theory, that's how that would work. And if Trump were convicted on a federal crime, he could even try to pardon himself immediately upon taking office, a maneuver that Debs himself promised to undertake if he won. So in closing, my closing thoughts on all this is that Biden, I mean, not Biden, Biden should go to jail. But Biden should definitely go to jail, especially because of this migrant crisis that he deliberately unleashed onto the population, right? But my closing thoughts on this is that Trump, he's not going to jail. I don't believe that he's going to go to jail. I do believe that he's going to be found guilty, on, a couple of charges. But I don't see the judge actually, big old Dave, thank you. I appreciate that. He said, bless you. But I definitely don't see Judge Merchant giving Trump jail time or sentencing him, if he would even get to the point of even being able to sentence him, because a guilty verdict, they would appeal it through the roof, and I believe the sentencing would be delayed way beyond the point of the election, right? Because the election is right around the corner. But even if that wasn't the case, in a worst case scenario for him, if he's found guilty, which he most likely will be of something with the Dex Act, I guess, something like that, Merchant isn't going to give him jail time because, in my opinion, to serve him up jail time and to sentence him, to me, some of you might disagree, but to me, that almost surely guarantees his victory. It almost surely guarantees his victory. And I'm pretty sure that they're not trying to do that. That Biden's team isn't trying to do that. But also, what they don't want to do is trigger the crazies, right? They don't want to trigger the fanatics. And I'm not saying that Trump supporters are crazy or fanatics, but in any and every group, whenever you have a fan base, you can say, or a group of loyal supporters, so on and so forth, there are always kind of crazies out there, and you don't want to trigger the crazies also. That doesn't mean that you take the rule of law lightly and you just don't put people in jail because you're scared of what their fan bases or supporters or family may do. Obviously, that's not how the law works. But in this particular case, when you have a trial that's BS from the jump, and they know it's BS, I don't believe that they're going to put him in jail behind BS. I don't believe that they're going to do that. I believe that ultimately what they want to do is just add another layer of, you could say, degeneracy onto Trump's name, right? That's what the goal is. That's what they're trying to do. The Democrats, people like Charlemagne, who I talk about a lot on this channel, Charlemagne the fraud, they love running around saying like, Trump has been indicted on 91 counts and blah, 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 what they would love nothing more to do is add, like I said, another layer of degeneracy on top of Trump, to where now they can say he's been indicted on 91 counts of this, that, and the third, and he's a convicted felon who's running for president. We can't have a convicted felon running for president, so on and so forth. I think that's ultimately what they're looking for and what they're trying to do with this guilty verdict. That's what I think they're looking to do with it. I don't believe that the trial was ever about actually putting him in jail. I think it was mainly about, depleting him of his financial resources, to which he's basically has infinite money, but just depleting him of his financial resources, frustrating him, his team, and his ability to just properly run a proper election, to get into the White House. They're just frustrating the situation, making things a lot more stressful for him. And, hopefully, or at least they're thinking, hopefully, that that'll work out in their favor. But if you look at all the polls, like we've discussed multiple times over on this channel, that's just, people aren't going for that, right? People aren't going for that. They see through what the Biden administration is doing. They see through what the DNC is doing. They see through the BS. Most people, I think it's about half the population, isn't even paying attention to this trial because they know it's foolishness. And for the most part, when you look at polling, those who are paying attention to it, they see it for what it is. They see it for it being foolishness, right? They see it for being foolishness, and that the trial is a sham trial. So with all that being said, the judge isn't going to put him in jail behind that. He's not going to do that. Not over a sham trial. This was just about frustrating his bid for president, stressing him out, depleting him of his resources. And like I said, adding another layer of degeneracy on top of him, to which you can say, this guy is also a convicted felon. That's what it's all about. But I could be wrong about all that as well. I could be wrong. We'll just have to wait and see. But I doubt it. I doubt it. Once again, in closing, he's going to get found guilty on some things because as you can see here, the deck is like crazy stacked against him. Crazy stacked against him. So he's definitely going to get found guilty on some things, but he's not going to jail. He's not going to jail. That's not happening. And I don't even believe that he'll be sentenced if he's found guilty for anything. He's not even going to be sentenced. It's not going to happen. He'll be appealing it like crazy, and he'll eventually get elected president. Because Biden doesn't even have a real path to victory at this point. Nobody's rocking with this guy. Nobody likes him. Biden's going to have to pull off, as I like to say, that 2020 magic once again, if he wants to win. That's really the only way that Biden could win, right? If he pulls off that 2020 magic one more time, where we all went to bed thinking that one guy won, and when we woke up, the other guy won, who most likely shouldn't have won, and there was no way for him to even catch up, but somehow he caught up, and boom, now he's president, right? And with all that being said, that does it for today's stream. That does it for today's show. So hopefully you all found this stream insightful, educational. You learned a little bit of something today. I learned some things today when I came across this information. I just wanted to share it with you all. So thank you all for joining me. Hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. And also share this video on your social media platforms and follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link is pinned in the comment section below. And will be in the description box as well. And shout out, did I say shout out to Walter Wilborn already for coming through, showing love? I got you on the screen, Walter. I appreciate you, Walter Wilborn, for coming through and showing love to the channel. Thank you all for joining me today. Have a great evening, and I will catch you all tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Peace, and have a great evening.